Lucio Vivaldi was born in Venice on March 4, 1678. He would study the violin all by himself. His father, a musician himself, wanted Vivaldi to become a priest. In the early 1700s, Vivaldi began to take holy orders, but a chest pain caused by asthma forced him to leave the priesthood. Vivaldi left with the nickname of the Red Priest, all because of his red hair. Antonio Vivaldi was employed as teacher and musical conductor of El Seminario Musicale dell'Ospedale della Pietà. This was a school for homeless girls, which was supported by the aristocracy of Venice. As musical director of La Pietà, was expected not only to direct musical activities, but to play the violin in all occasions and purchase all necessary instruments, and see that they were working. The orphans began to gain appreciation and steam abroad too. Vivaldi wrote concertos, cantatas, and sacred music for them. These sacred works, which number over 60, are buried. They included solo motets and large-scale choral works for soloists, double chorus, and orchestra. He had to compose a concerto at every feast and teach the orphans both music theory and how to play certain instruments. He was musical master there for 40 years. In 1730, Antonio Vivaldi moved from Venice to Prague with his father, struggling financially. Throughout the years, he wrote for different people. Vivaldi had the chance to meet the Emperor Charles VI in person in 1728, when he came to Trieste to oversee the construction of a new port. Charles VI invited him to come over to Vienna as court composer. He worked for Charles VI for over a month. Antonio Vivaldi's nickname, the Red Priest, gave him all sorts of chances for experimentation. He would compose a concerto for oboe one day and one for flute the next. He was an opera impresario in nearby opera houses. Vivaldi could compose with all its parts faster than a copyist could copy it. Being so talented playing the violin, Vivaldi had the chance to work for King Louis XV. One of his cantatas, Gloria e Meneo, was written specifically for the wedding of King Louis XV. Vivaldi wrote over 500 concerti, 50 operas, sonatas, and many more. One of his most famous albums is The Four Seasons. Here is Summer from The Four Seasons. Each one is prefaced by a short sonata or poem by Vivaldi describing the seasons of the year. Antonio Vivaldi was one of the first composers to write program music, recognized as one of the greatest Baroque music composers. His compositions were making a way outside of Italy as well. Much of his music was published in Dutch city of Amsterdam.
Antonio Vivaldi died on July 28, 1741, in Vienna, Austria, of internal fire, probably the asthmatic bronchitis from which he suffered all his life. He was buried in a simple grave after a funeral service that proceeded without music. 50 years later, he received a modest burial. Musicians and scholars revived Vivaldi's music in the early 20th century. Alfredo Casella, a composer and pianist, organized the Vivaldi Week revival in 1939.